Mohawk Council of Kahnawake Grand Chief Joseph Tokwiro Norton is proposing a temporary solution to the issue of RCMP presence in the Wet'suwet'en territory. The Grand Chief suggests that the Kahnawake peacekeepers head up a temporary indigenous police force to patrol the area in question.
Well, as crazy as it sounds, it's not something that we've not done before. We have suggested and we're offering to provide peace and security on the other side of the country in Wet'suwet'en territory. In other words, send a contingent of our peacekeepers. I mean, not the whole force, but either to, and this is just my suggestion, is either to patrol and become involved in the peace, keeping the peace in Wet'suwet'en territory, either alongside of the RCMP or independent. Where we're hearing conflicting reports about what's happening out there. There'd be another set of eyes on the ground so that they can be part of verifying or checking to make sure the RCMP are not harassing people, and as what we're hearing, they're being brutal to people. There's terms like that are being used. So if they're there, they provide that kind of security, and and I'm sure that would be welcomed. I say that because we had a similar situation, I believe it was 2004, in Kahnawake, and I was asked if we could send peacekeepers there, and we did. It was the Quebec government that wanted us to help them out, so we did. We went, we sent in our peacekeepers, and they calmed the situation down, and things became normalized as much as they could be. Well, in this circumstances over here, the idea also is to, in addition to our peacekeepers, to make a call across the country to look at other First Nations police forces, for them also to join in to help support this effort. Dwayne Zachary, fortunately, our chief peacekeeper, is president of the, I think it's called the Native Indigenous or the First Nations Native Police Forces, the chiefs across Canada, and has good contacts in working relationships with them. He's also good contacts with the RCMP on a constant basis, which is very helpful and essential in doing something like this. Because there may be some resistance to say no, who are the peacekeepers, what are they? They don't realize they have the equivalent type of training as the RCMP does. The one thing they have that's different is that they're Indigenous and they're trusted. Right now, the RCMP is not trusted at all. First, I met with, yesterday morning, I was in Ottawa. I met with Mark Miller. He's the Minister of Indigenous Services Canada, ISC, something like that. We spoke about this, and he was quite open and receptive. And he said, yes, he says this may be a good idea, to see if it can be done. Let's float this idea around and see what happens. In the afternoon, I met with David Lametti, Minister of Justice, and offered the same suggested solution. And he thought it was a good idea too. And hopefully this finds its way to the negotiating table, because we can offer it, but we just can't go there. We've got to get the hereditary chiefs to accept something like this as a temporary fix, if you want to call it that, with the long-term idea of them having their own Indigenous police force out there, I guess it may get a bit complicated with questions I've been asked. Well, what happens if there's an injunction that has to come out? Will the peacekeepers have to enforce injunctions and all of that? And my answer is very simple. It's no. They're out there to keep the peace, not to enforce injunctions or anything of that nature. So there are things that have to be worked out. There are discussions that have to take place amongst all the parties. You got to have federal government, provincial BC government, and the Wet'suwet'en people accepting something like this. So it's still very preliminary at this point. I would think that if Canada is willing to support and accept something like this, if the BC government are willing to support and accept something like this, then they should share the responsibility of funding this, because it's for everybody's benefit. You know, and it could set a precedent for across the country to have that kind of peacekeeping force in Canada that's prepared to go into situation. Hopefully you'll never have a situation like this again, but if it does happen, they're there. And if it catches on, you know, I mean, somebody has to do something to save Canada from itself, okay? That's the circumstances that where they're at this point in time. And it then leads to other ideas, other things that can happen that really involve Indigenous people in this country and Canadians in general, and the representative government, to truly create a peaceful circumstance and a situation between us. So, you know, this could lead to more than just what meets the eye at this point in time. That's what I'm hopeful for. I'm optimistic enough to think that we may have a breakthrough over the weekend. I don't have any secrets hidden or anything like that, but it's just a sense of the way there's several things that are at play. One is that there's discussions taking place, and it seems like they're positive. And there's this offer on the table to bring in additional policing services, our people, that says to, you know, we're willing to help. We want things to, we're generating, and I think we're creating a very positive type of sense of feeling. And, you know, based on that, and what's left to be done is basically what I'm basing my observations on, you know. So I'm saying over the weekend, you know.